Hello there and welcome to Luminar NEO Academy, the show where we teach you how to get the most out of this photo editing application. Now, if you've never been here before, my name is Jakub and I'm a creator and founder here at Clever Photographer. Now, before we're going to start, I have a few things I want to cover. First of all, at the end of the video, we're going to give you access to our popular Luminar NEO shortcut cheat sheet. So if you want to get that, make sure you stay until the end. Also, if you want to follow me along and do the edit on your own computer, make sure that you jump into the description, click on the link there and download the sample files. Also, if you do not own Luminar NEO, make sure you use the link in the description together with the discount code so you can get the best deal on your new purchase. And finally, we would like to ask you to please like, comment and share on this video. And also don't forget to subscribe to our channel so we can keep creating content like this. In today's video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create basic shadows in Luminar NEO. Now at the moment, Luminar NEO doesn't have any shadow tools. However, with the help of some layers and layer editing, we can come up with something very decent, and I will now show you how to do it. So as you can see, we are once again in Luminar NEO and we are in the catalog module and we are looking at the sample files. We're going to be working with two images and I will also show you two ways to create the shadows. Now, if you want to download the images as well as all the elements we're going to be using, all you need to do is to jump into the description of the video, follow the link there, and that will bring you into our Dropbox account. From there, you can download the files, bring them in, and do the edit on your own computer. So once you're ready, let's jump into it. Select the first image and then click on the edit on the top of your screen to bring it into edit module. Looking at this image, there is a lady in front, as you can see on our layers, as well as the background. This watercolor background is coming from our Luminar NEO Power Bundle. And if you want to find out more about this bundle, which has over 900 elements now, check out the link in the description and see what you can get there. But now let's go back to editing, and we're going to start by the first and more basic way of adding shadow to your images. So looking at the image and looking at the lady, you can see that the light, the source of light is coming from here. You can see that she has the highlights here and a little bit of shadows on this side. So ideally, we would be putting a shadow somewhere here. So again, the first and more basic way to do this is to use the same layer again. So for this, we're going to click on the plus sign on our layers and we're going to be using the same image in my images. If you don't have it here yet, click on load image, then navigate to the sample files and select the one woman cutout PNG. Once you're ready, click on open and it will appear in your my images. There, simply click on it and it will take a few seconds to add it to your layers. So there you have it, it's been added. Now what we want to do, we want to increase the opacity just a little bit. And then as you can see, it has a blue frame around and it has these little 4 dots in the corners. The dots helps us to adjust the size of the image while keeping the same ratio. Now I want you to adjust it and position it over the original image. It doesn't have to be perfect at all, so don't worry about it too much. Once you're happy with it, just increase the opacity. The next thing we want to do, we want to turn this layer to complete black because it's going to be a shadow. So how would we do this? Make sure that you select the layer we just added, then go into the develop tool in your main panel, open it, and then go into the curves. Inside of the curves, make sure that your black and white layer is selected, and then take the point on the bottom of your layers and slide it all the way toward right until the layer becomes completely black. So something like this. Once we're done with this, we can close the develop tool, apply it to the image, and come back to our layer properties. Just click on it, it will open again, and we will get this little blue frame around it. Now what we want to do is we want to come back to our layers and drag and drop our shadow layer under our original layer. So now it's behind the lady. Now hover over the layer and you can see we get this little hand icon. And while clicking and dragging around, we can now adjust the position of the shadow. So I think something like this is looking half decent. Now the next thing you could do, you could simply jump into your layer properties, play around with the opacity, adjust it, see something you like, and then just leave it there. You could also adjust the position and maybe just leave it like this. However, that's not the greatest result, so we're gonna try something else. Now, let's see with the opacity. I think something like this is looking good. Maybe we bring it down a little bit and leave it. With the opacity again, 25, looks good. Next thing we're gonna use is masking. So still we are on our shadow layer. We have it selected. We are in the layer properties. And now we're gonna move to the masking. Here I want you to select the linear gradient. And now we're gonna paint it in such a way that the closer to the subject, it's gonna be darker. The further from the subject, it's gonna be brighter and more transparent. So a little bit closer to the reality. So we're gonna paint the linear gradient from somewhere around here, and then we drag and drop it nicely to something like this. Now, once we're happy with the result, we can still adjust it if we want to. We can use these little arrows to kind of turn it around. We can use the arrows at the beginning and end of the linear gradient to see the result. However, I think that something like this will look good. Once we're happy, we click on linear gradient again. That will bring us back, and we can see that the shadow is there. However, it's a little bit more natural. Now we can come back to our properties, and in the properties we can again play around with the opacity to make it a little bit more or less visible. So I think something like this. We can still adjust the position of the shadow, and with this I think it's about as far as we can go with this type of shadow. The only thing what you could still do now is still making sure that you have your shadow layer selected. Come to the creative part of your toolbar and use one of the tools like glow or mystical. Let's try the glow, open it. Now increase the amount all the way up. In the type, change it to Orton effect soft. And then in advanced setting, just in case you don't see it, you need to click on it. Increase the softness all the way up. So this will soften the shadow a little bit and make it a little bit more natural and realistic. So this is the first way of creating shadow here in Luminar NEO. The result is quite nice, it's very simple, and it will make your result a little bit more realistic. However, now I'm going to show you the second way, which will give us a little nicer result. Now for the second method of creating shadows in Luminar NEO, we're going to be using black layers. So how are we going to do this? Let me show you. We're coming back to our layers panel, and we need to click on the plus sign. Inside of my images, I already have the black layer here. But for you, if you don't have it here, what you need to do is to click on load image and then click on the 11 black layer. Now this layer is 10,000 pixels on 10,000 pixels big. It's 100% black, and it's again coming from our Luminar NEO Power Bundle. It's a part of the working match layers there, and you should definitely check it out by following the link in the description. Once you import it in, it will drop into my images, and then just simply click on it. It takes few seconds, and then it gets added to our layers. As you can see now, it's on the top, so we can come back to our layer properties on our main toolbar. Here what we want to do, we want to increase the opacity to 100. Then in the blend modes, we want to change it to multiply. And in the image mapping, you want to click on fill, just to cover the whole frame. Once you're done with this, come back to your layers and drag and drop the layer under your main subject. Now, once you do that, we need to turn our attention towards masking, because that's what we're going to use to create the shadows. So coming back to our layer properties and still making sure that our new black layer is selected. Inside of our layer properties, I want you to click on masking. And now come to Mask Actions, click on it, open it. In Mask Actions, click on Fill, so that will create a new mask. And now I want you to click on Invert, so it will hide the layer. Now it's completely hidden, and it's ready to be added by using one of the masking methods. For this, we're going to be using Brush, so we click on Brush. We make sure that we on Paint, and now we're just going to adjust our brush. So basically, we have a black layer over the entire image, which we now make sure that it's hidden. And now we're just going to paint it in by using the masking. So paint, you want to make sure that your softness is on 100, strength on 100, and just adjust the size, something that works for you. I think something like this looks good. Now we still have the old shadow here, so we're gonna use it as a guidance. We don't worry about it now, and we're gonna paint something similar. So let's go for it. Nice and slow, creating the shadow, painting in this area, following the lead of the previous shadow. Something like this. Around, definitely. Her arm. Down, little, and down. So let's see. Something like this is looking good. Up around her hair. So something like this to start with. Now I know it's not looking great. However, don't worry about it. We're not finished yet. So I think this is it for now. I like the shape of the shadow and I like where it is. So let's go back. Let's click on the properties and we're gonna bring down the opacity. So really down a lot to something, I think maybe 40. Let's have a look. 30. Maybe even 30 is looking good. Now let's hide this and let's remind ourselves how the shadow look with the first method. Really sharp, really defined, not really realistic at all. Let's hide that. And let's bring the new shadow we're creating with nice glow, nice soft edge, much better result. I'm really happy about this. Now, while we have the layer selected, we can go back to our layer properties and we can also now adjust the location. So something like this. But we are not finished yet. We're gonna add one more black layer. So let's click on a plus sign, select the black layer. Now it's added to our layers. Let's bring it under our main subject. Now back to our layer properties, increase the opacity all the way. Don't worry about the stretching because it's covering the position of the shadow anyway, and go straight into the masking. In the masking, click on mask actions, again, fill, and then invert. So now we have hidden it. Now we're coming back to the brush. Now what we're trying to do is to paint one more shadow a little bit closer to the subject, and we're gonna leave that shadow a little bit darker. So that way we create a little bit more depth and we create a result that will be a little bit more natural. So let's go back to our brush setting. Again, make sure that you on paint, adjust the size this time to something a little bit smaller, so maybe 90. Softness 100, strength 100, and let's go for it. So we are painting closer to the main subject, so something like this here, making sure that we're leaving a little bit of space around. Again, going around the edge, nice and slow. Take your time. There's no point to rush it. So something like this. And there we are. Maybe even here a little bit more, and that's looking good. Now if we need to make any adjustments to it, we can always switch to erase and then brush away a part we are not so sure about. However, I think we were looking good. Maybe we add a little bit more around the head, and that's looking great. Maybe in this area we went a little bit too far as well, so we switch back to the erase and just paint away a little bit of the shadow. Something like this. Great. Now, once we finish here, let's go back to our properties again and bring down the opacity. So something like this. Now, again, we can adjust the location and it's looking great. Maybe the opacity down even more so. Let's see. Somewhere around here, we good. Now we can switch back to our first shadow. Let's pop it out a little bit more. Second shadow as well, and there you have it. We can still adjust it by going back to masking, still using a brush, still using the eraser. We can adjust if we feel that there was a little bit more too much here. Maybe I took too much off, something like this, but I'm sure you're now getting the idea. So basically we are painting in two sets of shadows. One the little wider, a little bit more transparent. Second one darker, the one closer to the subject, creating something a little bit more realistic. If you feel that the shadows are a little bit too visible, we can always just move them a little bit more behind the main subject so it's not as visible. And the result is something like this, and I think it's looking really good. So with the use of black layer and masking, we can create something that is quite realistic and it's gonna look great on your project. So this was quite simple use of this method on this simple wall. And now we're gonna play around a little bit with my favorite character, with Sherlock Holmes, and we're gonna create a whole new scene. So I hope you're gonna enjoy this. Let's jump into the catalog and start with it. So as you can see, we are in the catalog module, and as I promised you, we're gonna be working on an image of Sherlock Holmes. To start with, we have a background and a picture of Sherlock on a white background. I have used the portrait background removal tool to remove the background from it. And if you want to learn how to use this tool, just follow the link in the top right corner of your screen to find out how to use it and how to get the most out of it. After that, I exported Sherlock with the transparent background, and now it's ready for the editing. So to start with, we're gonna select the background, and then we're gonna click on edit to bring it into the edit module. Here what we wanna do, we wanna place Sherlock here. So we're gonna go into our layers, click on plus sign, then click on load image. Then I want you to navigate into your sample files and simply click on 02 Sherlock cutout. Click on open, and that will bring the PNG file and image of Sherlock into my images. Here we click on the little thumbnail, and that will bring it into our layers. After it appears in our layers, let's move into layer properties and increase the opacity. Now we can also use the blue frame around the image and the little 4 dots in each of the corner to adjust the size. So we want to place it quite close to the camera, so somewhere around here, and do something like this. Now I already done the color matching of Sherlock with its background, and if you want to learn how to do that, you can also watch my tutorial on how to color match in Luminar NEO, and again I will place the link in the top right corner of your screen now. So once we're happy with the position and the scale, so I think something like this, we can move our attention towards the shadows. So when it comes to composites like this, you have your background, then you bring in your subject, you do the transformation, you adjust the scale, the position, and so on. Then you do the color matching, you do the luminance, saturation, and color matching. And once you're done with that, you can move on to other aspects like shadows, reflections, and so on. So in today's tutorial, as we're focusing on shadows, now we're gonna do that. Now we're gonna be creating 2 types of shadows here, the contact shadow and the main shadow. So let's start with the contact shadow. As in the first example, we're gonna be using the black layers. So let's go back to our layers and click on a plus sign. Here we're simply gonna select our black layer, click on it, and it will be added into our layers. So it's already here. Now we wanna again drag and drop it under our main subject, and then simply just bring it down under him, as the shadow will be just around his shoes. Once we're done with that, we come back to our layer properties, increase the opacity, and move into the masking. The workflow is exactly the same like in the first example. We need to go into mask actions, click on fill, click on invert, and now the idea is the same like before. Wherever we're gonna paint with our brush, that's where the black will appear. The first thing we need to do is to observe the direction of the light. Looking at the image and looking at how the shadow falls, the source of light is coming from this direction. So we know that the shadow will be going towards here. The first shadow we're gonna be creating is called contact shadow. Now this shadow is usually close to the subject and generally is in that areas where the new subject is touching the surface, ground, or any elements of the background. In our case, it's gonna be the area around his shoes. And again, knowing that the light is coming from here, it will most likely build the area here and here. So for this, let's zoom in and come to our shoes. And we're gonna simply paint the shadow here. And as the light is coming from here, we're gonna paint the shadow here. So let's start by that. Now, coming back to our brush, we want a smaller brush, and we want the softness to be actually quite low, somewhere around 40, as this shadow doesn't have as much softness and it's not that big neither. So we're gonna just paint it here, again, making sure we have the right size, and let's go for it. So something like this, then following the surface, so down and up here. So I think that's good to start with. We can adjust it a little bit more here, and perfect. Now looking at his shoe, that would also be a little bit of shadow under the tip of his shoe. So we could do something simple like this here. Maybe even more so. We can connect the two and have something like this. We can always adjust it, so don't worry about it too much. And let's move to the second shoe. Now, there would be no shadow on this part. However, most likely there would be shadow again under his shoe. And we can add a little bit of shadow on the outer part of the shoe here. So something like this. Looking at it, I don't think there will be that much shadow here, but maybe something like this. Now, of course, you can take as much time as you want to do this. This is really just to show you the idea, and then you can take it and bring it anywhere you like. So once we're happy with this, what we need to do is to come back with our brush, go into the properties, and again, play around with the opacity to see what we like. Now, I like this shadow to be quite strong, so I think somewhere around 80 looks good. If we still want to adjust the shape of the shadow, it's nothing easier than going back to our masking, still clicking on a brush, and using the paint or erase here. So again, adjusting the softness, don't forget that we were quite low. And let's just say that we went a little bit too far here. And of course, I took away the part I didn't want to. So let's just paint it back. Something like this is perfect. And erase maybe a little bit more in this area. And again here. And I think that's looking good. So that's our contact shadow. Let's zoom back. And that is a good starting point. Now looking at it like this, I can see that the shadow is still a little bit too dark. So we can click on the properties and bring the opacity down even more so. So that's a good start. Now the next shadow we're going to be creating is the main or the ambient shadow. For this, we need to get inspired a little bit by the other elements in the image. And looking at it, we have lots of shadows coming in these directions. So I think we're going to paint the shadow towards this direction. Again, we're going to use the black layer. So we're coming back to our layers, click on plus sign, bring a black shadow in. And once it's ready, let's position it all the way down. Make sure that the opacity is on 100. Then we can click on masking, and you already know the workflow. Mask actions, fill, and invert. So now we have it ready. Now we can come into our brush. And now again, we need to zoom in. Don't forget the direction of the light from here. So the shadow of Sherlock would be falling towards here. And we're following a little bit of the shadows of the buildings to get a little idea on the direction. So for this, let's zoom in. And first of all, let's have a look at his leg. I think the leg would be throwing a shadow in this direction. So adjust the size of the brush. Now for the ambient shadow, you want the softness to be around 100. You want it nice and soft. Now just to have the right size of a brush. And let's go from here. Nice one brush. And again from here. And I think a little bit around the shoe. So something like this. So that's the shadow of the first leg. Now I know it's not looking great, but don't worry, stick with me. We will get there. Zoom out just a little bit so we can see the edge of the picture. And now similarly, we're gonna continue with the shadow from here. And we're trying to keep the same direction as the other shadows. We want the legs to be nice and wide. And get something like this. Now similarly, also his shoe would create the shadow somewhere here and maybe even more so. Now looking at him, he has the legs, but after that he has the coat. So somewhere around here we're gonna paint the coat. So we're gonna create one line, two lines, and just create the coat from here. I think something like this. Perfect. So that's about this. Let's zoom out. And it's a good start. Now we come back to our properties and bring the opacity down. And actually it doesn't look that bad, I think. It's looking quite nice. The shadow is there. Now the opacity is completely up to you to see what you like. You can still adjust the shape if you want to by coming back into the masking. Again, playing around with the brush. Let's zoom in. We can maybe erase a part of it. Let's bring the mask in. And we can just maybe brush away this part a little bit. I also thought that around the shoe here, there should be a little tint. About here, paint, and we can make a little more of the coat. And I think that that's about it. Once we're happy, come back to properties, and that's our shadow there. Now you can make it darker, or you can make it a little bit more transparent and brighter. But I think it's a good starting point. So we have our contact shadow, we have our ambient shadow, and now looking at Sherlock, we also need to do some shadow work on him so it's a little bit more realistic. Again, knowing that the light is coming from here, he would be more brighter on this side and darker on this side. That's just how it is. So how are we gonna do this? Well, first of all, I forgot to make sure that we take our shadow layer and actually drop it behind our main subject. So that will help here. And now how are we gonna adjust the shadow on him? So we select the layer with Sherlock, and now we're gonna go into the develop tool. In the develop tool, go into the curves, and in the curves, go to the black and white curve and make one dot in the middle of the main curve. Now simply drag and drop it towards the bottom right corner to make the whole subject darker. Don't worry if you overdo it, we will fix that later, or we can always adjust it later. Now, of course, the whole subject is too dark. So for this, we're gonna use masking. We're gonna just paint some areas of the subject to make him darker based on the direction of the light. So for this, we're gonna go into the masking. And so we don't get distracted, click on mask actions and click on invert. So now, as you can see, the dark parts disappear. And they will only appear wherever we're gonna brush with our brush tool. So click on brush, make sure that you're on paint, and for this, the strength we're gonna go on somewhere around 50, and we just adjust the size. Let's zoom in by using Command or Control plus, and let's have a look. So where would he be darker? Well, definitely on this side of his coat, definitely. So strength down a little bit, somewhere around 30. I think definitely at this part of his coat, definitely here. Then I think around the hand as well, and following the coat, something like this. Again, a little bit more on the coat. Also on the face, on this side of the face, I think he would be darker in his face. Let's zoom in a little further and let's continue. Looking at his hat, let's adjust the size, and this part of the hat would definitely be darker as well because he's facing away from the source of light. Maybe here as well a little bit. On this side of his hand as well, he would be darker. Let's have a look at it. This part, definitely this part. Let's make the brush a little bigger. Again, definitely this part. And definitely this part. And that's looking so much better. Now let's have a look at his shoes. Zooming in. Obviously, looking at it like this is right. That is, the light is coming from here. However, this part should be darker. So let's increase the strength because we want them quite dark. And simply paint over his shoes. So darker here, that's for sure. Something like this. And darker here as well. Now it doesn't get that dark, but that's fine. It's better than anything. Now bring back the strength to somewhere around 30. We can continue with his pants here. They would be darker on this side. Similarly on this side. So I'm gonna leave it for now because I think that you're getting the idea of applying the shadow to the subject, following the direction of the light, and again making it even more realistic. So you learn ultimately 3 types of shadows today. The contact shadow we have created around his shoes, and that's the areas where the subject is touching any of the surface of the new background. Then you learn how to create the ambient on main shadow, which we created here. It was a lot of fun with the softness and again using the layers, recreating ultimately the figure and the subject again on the new background. And finally, you also learn how to create the shadow on the subject itself to make it a little bit more realistic and sell the entire result. What I would do right now is I would export this image all together so we can merge all the layers, bring it back into the Luminar NEO and do all other editings to it. So you could come out with something like this, which I think is pretty cool result from where we started.
And now it's time to get your gift. If you want to get access to our Luminar NEO shortcut cheat sheet, all you need to do is to head to our website cleverphotographer.com/luminargift. And there you can download the cheat sheet and start to use it right away. And there you have it. So I hope you had fun and I hope you learned something new. If you did, please make sure that you like, comment and share our video. And also don't forget to subscribe to our channel so we can keep creating content like this. For today, thank you very much for watching. My name was Jakub and I can't wait to see you in the next video.